and welcome everyone to Language Talks. In today's episode, we explore the fascinating world of languages with Heike Wolter. She is joining us from Bangalore. She brings rich insights into multilingualism, intercultural communication, and real world language use. Heike is a German language freelance editor, author, and co author who is deeply passionate about languages, texts, and books. Her central focus is to help people express their ideas clearly and vividly. One example, especially interesting for everyone in India, is she wrote a book together with the former German ambassador to India, Lindner, about what the West should learn from India. Alongside her writing and editorial work, she is also a historian and educator, working at the University of Regensburg and teaching history. Her approach to teaching and writing emphasizes awakening curiosity and creativity rather than simply transferring knowledge. I find this really interesting. Let us talk to her about it. Hello, Heike.
Hello, Larita.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
You work across multiple linguistic and cultural contexts. So, how did your personal language journey begin? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's quite a complex story because I grew up in the former GDR, which was the socialist part of Germany, and therefore German was my mother tongue, and my first foreign language at school was Russian. And later I chose French, but not for practical reasons, but simply I found this language so beautiful. And because in the GDR you had no opportunity to travel either in a country where French or English was spoken, there was no idea of taking some of these languages for practical reasons, but you could just choose whatever you wanted. And then after the fall of the Berlin Wall, so the political change in the GDR, English became suddenly mandatory in my school, although I hadn't learned it. I decided then, after finishing school, to go to London as an au pair. I worked there and I learned English, and later I worked as a lecturer at the German department at the University of Reading and learned even more English. And during my studies at the university in Germany, I also explored some other languages, but not to that extent. But I learned a bit of Italian, a bit of Arabic, and some Latin for my studies, as well as that I studied German as a foreign language to teach it to foreigners. So today it's that wherever I go, I like to learn at least a few words of the local language. Like now in Bangalore, I started with a few words of Kannada at least, to like learn new vocabulary, new sounds, and like building a bridge to the people that live here. Like I can say, for example, Namaskara, Nanu Heike Hegidira. So this is my Kannada, basically, and people are very pleased when I use it.
This is so interesting. I mean, your love for languages is showing. Very nice. So, what does knowing a language mean to you? Since you have introduced yourselves to so many languages.
I think there are several levels of what knowing a language can mean. So the first and basic thing is like a practical level. Yeah, I can say I know a language when I'm able to some extent to communicate in this language. Yeah, I could like express everyday things. I can go for shopping, ask for directions, or having at least a simple conversation. And then there is a cultural level or cultural meaning of what knowing means. This is something that I only experience in German and in English, the two languages I'm most proficient in. I understand in those languages references, I can pick up nuances, I can interpret idiomatic expressions, and this allows me to adapt to this cultural context and expectations in those two languages. And even another level is an emotional level, especially in German, it is something I use intuitively. I don't have to think about it. And in English I feel that it brings out another aspect of myself, of my personality. It's more that I feel a bit more academically in English. And also I feel the joy of playing with language, with this kind of Oxford English that I have learned there. And finally, there's a level of identity that comes with knowing a language. Language that I speak, even if only a little bit or a tiny bit sometimes to say, this broadens my perspectives on the world, because I learn not only a language, but I learn a bit about this culture and how it expresses or how it translates into language.
Wow, you have explained it so beautifully. I can understand. I mean, once we learn a language, we can identify with that culture, with that country, and with the people, obviously. That's so nice. So, what do you think? Is the future multilingual, or will it be dominated by one global language?
I would say that's a very personal answer. I'm not an expert in linguistics, yeah, but I think the future of language use is very unlikely to be dominated by one single global language. I don't think that. I think it will almost certainly be multilingual, but there will be languages that stand for a certain area of language use. Like, for example, I'm sure that English will continue to dominate the world of science and also of business. Also, there will be non-human languages, as we can see with artificial intelligence. This language might come in several human languages, like I have AI content in German, in English, in French, whatever, but it creates an own language that's not human made. But I'm sure that for like everyday social interactions, we will stay with our local languages.
Absolutely. I think this new AI language that will be coming up, it will be interesting to see how it develops and how it rules. What are the biggest challenges in translating not just languages, but cultural meanings, cross-cultural concepts? So please tell us about it.
Yeah. First, I have to say I'm not a translator myself. Sometimes part of my work as an editor is like to work with translated texts, and it's good if I have a basic knowledge of the language where the text comes from, but I'm not a translator myself, at least not a professional one. But when I proofread for historical and other facts in a manuscript, it's often quite obvious that with different terms, you express different views of things. And I'd like to explain that to you in a concrete example, yeah? Coming from history. There was a period in European history between the classical antiquity and the medieval ages. And in this time, many people in Europe migrated for several reasons. Historiography names this sometimes in a very neutral way as migration period. But the Germans, for example, in their books often use the term Völkerwanderung, which literally means migration of peoples. And the older English term is barbaric invasion. So it's quite obvious that not only the words differ, but the meaning of it also differs. It's a difference between people, peoples, and barbarians. Yeah, and this is what you have to capture as an editor, as well as reading between the lines what did the author want to tell me with what was written.
Oh, this is so interesting, and one has to be so careful while proofreading or editing texts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Has digital communication changed standards of, writing, proofreading, or even editing?
Mm-hmm. It's a very interesting and very complex question, because first we have to ask ourselves, what actually does digital communication mean? Does it mean I use the computer or my smartphone? Or does it mean sending my thoughts around the globe easily? Or is it translating simultaneously? All this is done with digital communication. But I'll try to explain it referring to my editing work because I know that best. So what happens to manuscript editing with digital communication? I would say first, the quality does not drop, but the working process is different. Writing, editing, publishing books has definitely changed. Let's say manuscripts can be written, can be shared, can be revised instantly. We can even work collaboratively on a document. And sometimes that's very nice because it makes things easier. Sometimes it feels a bit rushed. Yeah, I cannot think about what I would like to change first, but I have to send a draft right away. What would I do to the text? And I also feel that the production timelines with publishers are quite tight now. The market demands for quicker releases. The topics are more acute, and this is more relevant to the people. And then writers are now constantly revising their texts. Yeah, in former years it was like we sent things from one place to the other, and in between, like nothing happened to the text. Today, it's like every day something happens to the text, and I have to keep on. And editors, I would say, therefore step into the process of editing earlier. And also I feel that AI plays an important role in how texts are today changed and also challenged. And for me, something else is quite relevant at the moment, since I'm at the moment in India, which is that author-editor interaction across countries is very easily done with digital communication.
That is so true. And what an important point you have mentioned. That is so right. What role does emotional depth play in your writing or editing or, this process?
This depends on the book. So if I write one of my own books where I am the author, there is definitely deep emotional commitment, because I really believe that you feel in a book if what it means to the author. For example, a few years ago, I wrote a book about perinatal loss, because this is something I experienced myself. And even doing this in a supportive manner with lots of facts, figures, and findings from science and several quotes of other people, the readers tell me when they write emails to me or so that they feel my emotions and my thoughts in the book. And that's important. Or when I write about hiking, which is something I really like to do in my free time, you feel in the book that I am writing about something I'm fascinated about and I'm curious about. So whatever emotions, very sad ones or also happy ones, they are deeply reflected in my own books. So when I co-author a book, then it's a bit different, because I have to find a professional bond to my author, who is often very much emotionally involved in the writing. Therefore, I have to be, to a certain extent, to be convinced about what will be written, but not necessarily there has to be an emotional bond between me and the topic, And in editing, the emotional depth is the least important, because I'm only editing. I do not change the text to that extent that my emotions play an important role. But what I think is nevertheless important is that my emotion, or that I have good emotions towards this editing process. And I'm lucky enough that because I'm so much sought after in my work, I'm able to decline an offer if I feel that it does not match with me. So emotion plays a little role in that.
I know. I mean, I think you are walking that thin rope.
Yes. Well said.
My next question is connected to this question. Like,
Mhm.
how do you balance personal expression with the expectation of your readers and obviously the publishers or for whom you are editing or proofreading the text? So again, that is a difficult path you are treading.
Yeah, rope was the right expression for that, because balancing personal expression with the reader's expectation is all about adapting your voice without you losing identity in this. It's not a compromise where one side can like win and the other loses, but it's a conscious adjustment, and this adjustment depends on purpose, audience, and context. And the beginning is actually the purpose. I have to know, why do I want to write a certain book, or even why do I want to share something with the world? This will be what keeps me going, what keeps the author or the text going. But then you also have to ask, what are my readers expecting? And you will make your book more accessible to them. For example, if I write, as I often do for an academic audience, about history, the expectation will greatly differ from what the readers of, for example, my hiking guide want to know about the topic and the way in which they want to know it. So to make it short, balancing means I respect my readers' needs and I preserve my own needs or my own voice. And the latter one is crucial for me, because otherwise I'm quite sure that in no time artificial intelligence will clearly replace me.
That's so true. Moving on to your writing. So, when you're writing on behalf of someone, so what challenges do you face? I mean, how do you deal with it, or how do you go about it?
Um, so what I do first is that I try to capture how my author, I would say, sounds. So in tone, is he or she formal or friendly or persuasive? So then what does he or she uses in terms of vocabulary and sentence style? And what are their individual way of expressing themselves and expressing ideas? So I try to grasp this part of their personality. Yeah, for example, I conduct interviews, I read past texts of this person or social media posts, or I listen to speeches. So everything that makes this person accessible to me. And what I really have to do is that I have to avoid my own voice, even if I make suggestions of what to include or how to shape the text. But it's not about me. It's about
Okay.
perspective taking, about being empathetic towards someone. And also, I have to be very flexible when it comes to revisions and feedback, because those are often to a much broader extent than when I do only editing. So the best outcome, I would say, is when the person feels they could have written this text by themselves, and if the reader feels the same. So I'm kind of hiding in the back. And this is also
Uh,
important as a ghostwriter or even as a co-author, that I come to terms, or that I enjoy not being always credited, at least not on the cover of a page of a book, that I'm fine with it and I really embrace it. And that's what I do. And I also have to consider that many of the information I get is quite sensitive or even confidential and must be handled in the most careful way. And that's also something that is an important skill in writing on behalf of someone.
my God, yeah. I mean, it's a big deal, isn't it? You are considering so many things from
Mm-hmm.
your side and the client side, I would say.
Yes, yes, I do. And also from the publisher's side.
Also from the publisher side, my God. And the reader's point of view also has to come in.
Yeah.
So many things. Great. So, what linguistic elements do you focus on most when you're writing or editing? So, or proofreading also. So, is it syntax or is it vocabulary or what is it?
I would say that first priority has flow. So flow determines how easily a reader can follow my texts. So it means that there is some kind of, let's say, logical progression of ideas or smooth transitions between thoughts and paragraphs. So it's this kind of natural rhythm to a text. See, even if grammar and vocabulary are totally correct, poor flow makes reading feel confusing or even awkward. So I have to do this kind of step-by-step polishing the text. And this is the process I go through. And there was one friend of mine, a very old man, and he told me about his approach to text when he learned English. His mother tongue was Polish. And this is something that goes with me in all editing, all writing, which is a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and pictures of silver. And this is what I try to reach every day.
Amazing, isn't it? At what stage of writing do you think editing is most valuable? Because editing is really, really important. I personally feel that even after a very good writer has written a very good text, still.
Yeah.
What do you?
So I would say this depends on the writer's expertise. Yeah. I have authors with a strong message, but no idea how to make a book from it. And those I'll have to accompany from the very first moment of their writing to ensure that they have a clear concept and that I can bring in my strengths in the writing process. And then there are sometimes authors who have already written something themselves. Sometimes it's a detailed expose, or sometimes it's like, let's say, some sample chapters. And in these cases, I can give my guidance on what was already written and point out potential problems. So I'm in the middle of the process. And then most often I receive an already finished manuscript for which I make suggestions. But the most challenging situation, I would say, is when the manuscript has already been typeset. Because what happens then? Everyone then hopes that any changes I suggest should be so minor that the layout does not have to be adjusted. And also translations are very challenging. And why is that? Because when somebody has published something in another language, I receive the work only in German for some content review and adaptations to the German market. And now what happens? The author has already experienced their book in the original market and often very successful. Otherwise, it would not have come to my desk. And when I suggest changes now, for example, because there are different conventions in the German book market or different expectations regarding details or professionalism or references, then sometimes the author is surprised of that I want to change something in the text. And not always.
Right. In this typesetting thing, I had never thought that it will come in the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, on which projects are you working on right now, Heike?
It's a bit difficult to answer this question because first thing is I work simultaneously on several projects, and the second most important one is that I'm usually not allowed to talk about current projects as long as they are not published. So I'll let you know what I did in the last month just to give an idea of what my work consists of. Yeah, in the last month I edited one book about the history of Japan, one book about the history of the Roma people, and one book on American history around 1776. Then I helped to conceptualize a book about feminist policies, empathy and resistance. I gave advice on a very personal story of a young woman who attempted a suicide and wrote a book about this. Then I co-authored a book about perimenopause, and I was the ghostwriter for a private biography and authored articles for German history magazines and a small book about disability history. So it's very broad what I do.
Okay. I mean, that is a really very diverse portfolio, and there is a lot that you have been working on, isn't it?
Yeah, it is
That is great.
very interesting every day.
Every day, yes. You have learned already so many languages, but which other languages interest you in addition to all these?
Um, Maybe I can start with something that's not new to me, but that I would want to achieve. And it might surprise you a bit, but what I really want to achieve is formal certification of the highest level of English, which would be the C2 certificate. I haven't achieved it, and I have to work on my knowledge of vocabulary. So this is the first thing. And in the more distant future, I really flirt with the idea to live for a few months in a country where Arabic is spoken, because my current knowledge is totally theoretical, and I would like to practice it more. And then I would definitely like to travel around just listening to other interesting languages. The more alien, the better. Like, wouldn't it be incredible and exciting, for example, to travel to South Africa and experience this kind of click language of the Xhosa? You know that it's a people in southern Africa who have a very special language. It's not like an alphabet, but to us it sounds just like clicking. So this is what I would like to do.
My God, so many things. I wish you all the best for that.
Thank you so much.
It was lovely talking to you and knowing about your work. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for inviting me and letting me tell all these things, hopefully to a broader audience. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for joining me in conversation with Heike. See you in the next episode. Till then, have a good day. Bye bye.